All right, welcome to the Train ATX podcast. Today we have Anna Craig. She's a coach and trainer at Kollective. She's also the associate head of athletic performance at the University of Texas. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yay. I'm so pumped. Nico?
So I'm also super pumped. We definitely love to have another female join the show and give her perspective on her profession and her experience. So you've been in Austin since 2010. What has made you want to stay here over the last 13 years?
It keeps pulling me back in. Every single time I've maybe looked for another opportunity or growth within my field, it seems like something pops up in Austin and keeps me here another X number of years. And now something that's unique in my profession is how long I have been here. Is you're going to see in strength and conditioning people, they say you have to go to grow. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying. And so I'm kind of a unicorn where I've been in the same city for a long time, and I've been able to progress still along the way and been fortunate. I love the city of Austin, and community and life outside of work is very important to me. And I think that's a big reason why I've stayed around the city, is maybe there have been some sacrifices for personal successes, you know.
Going back to college, I'm interested to see, because obviously you've been in this profession for so long now, what initially led you to get your degree in exercise, sports, and science?
Good question. I've always loved sports. I've always been highly interested in activity. I got a superlative in high school that said most likely to be seen working out. So I think I've always authentically been me.
Held true to that.
I didn't honestly know strength and conditioning was a profession when I was in high school. And so I thought if you went into exercise science, then you had to be a PE teacher, which my mom is one. So I have a lot of respect for PE teachers. Or I thought you would have to be a physical therapist or, something in the medical field. Mm. So I didn't actually initially go into strength and conditioning in college. I started out as a landscape architecture major.
Okay.
Which, if you think about the mixture of art and science, it actually makes sense. I'm an active, I enjoy the hands-on portion of things, but I also love the science. Mm-hmm. So my sophomore year of college, I called my mom and I said, I've made a horrible mistake, and I freaked her out. And I said, I think I've chosen the wrong major. And she was like, oh, okay, we can say it. We can handle this. So I decided to change my major to exercise science. And I learned about the field of strength and conditioning by watching an ESPN special. And I thought that looks like the best job in the whole world. Yeah. So I cold emailed the head football strength coach at Texas Tech. And I thought, if I can do football, I can do anything. And he said, come on into my office. We'll see. I asked, do you take interns? I have no experience. This isn't even my major yet. He said, come on in. Intimidating giant man. Yeah. And he started asking me about what I'm into, or like what are my extracurricular activities. Mm-hmm. And I told him that I was heavily involved in a church organization. Mm-hmm. And he said, and if you're religious, this will make sense. Maybe not for everyone, but he said he just felt like God in that moment was like, give her a chance.
Yeah.
And he has been my mentor and family ever since then. And that's what got me into strength and conditioning.
Wow. That's amazing.
So for the first probably 7 years of my profession, I was the only female in any environment, really. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So you started at Texas Tech, and then what was kind of that step that led you to University of Texas?
So I graduated the semester that Mike Leach left Texas Tech, and I was pretty lost at that point. And so I reached out to the basketball strength and conditioning coach, because when football staffs are gone, they are gone. Mm-hmm. It's like overnight, the offices are wiped out and nobody's there. And so I'm thinking, well, I was going to be a graduate assistant. So what do I do next? Yeah. My mentor's gone to Tennessee. And so I reached out to the basketball strength and conditioning coach, and he had told me during a workout in the summer, if you ever need anything, let me know. And so, because we trained his basketball guys a couple of times. And so I reached out to him, we met up, and I told him the schools that I was interested in applying to. And he said, if you go to Texas, My best friend is the head men's basketball strength coach there. I did the exact program you're looking at. I'll get you a TA with one of the teachers to help pay for school. So I got in. I got a graduate. It's called a graduate internship. They don't have assistants at Texas with the men's basketball team. And then I TA'd under a wonderful woman in the kinesiology department. And that's what got me to Texas.
Wow. It is interesting how connected, not interesting, that's not the right word, but just how you mentioned like go and grow, and like how when a football head coach gets let go, like everybody's gone. And I have family in the football world, and yeah, it's like they move constantly all the time. And so I think it's really cool how like connected to the sports community is, especially like college. I feel like, and as much movement as there is, it's like, oh, okay, we'll call up so-and-so because they used to be at this. Like, I'm always interested in like the football coaches' trees, you know, and like where all of the people and players like end up, and just how like intertwined that world is.
And you must have made a good impression on them, because networking is super important, I feel like, in the space that you're in. And the only way that you can really kind of network is if you put in the work. And then people are more willing to kind of put you in places that can get you to the next level. So I'm sure there's some details in there where you're being a little modest about you putting in, you know, a pretty significant amount of time to be able to earn that level of a referral, because those are definitely special. So you've had all this experience in college, right? And now you've found yourself with an opportunity with Kollective. So kind of walk us through like what that kind of looked like for you, and when you still have your obligations, obviously, with University of Texas.
So talking about networking, that's another thing that connected me to Kollective. So Jeremy Hills, the founder of Kollective, was one of my football athletes, and I helped him rehab from an ankle injury. So we've known each other since 2011, 2012. So COVID happened. As COVID kind of the world was reopening, I started teaching a class once a week at another gym in town called Austin Bouldering Project, just for fun. I was just getting antsy. And I loved it. I mean, the people were so bought in. I saw people get really good results from consistency, and it kind of opened my eyes to training the general population, not just college athletes. I also mentioned, you know, you saying like you have to go to grow and wanting new opportunities. I've been in the college sector for a long time. So I also just wanted a little bit of a new challenge and to kind of scratch a different itch. I went and toured Kollective just to say hi to Jeremy, and also through a series of events played spike ball with 3 of the trainers that work at Kollective. And I thought, these guys are awesome. This environment is so great. And then Jeremy had a conversation with me, and we kind of decided I would teach 2 classes a week, and I trained 3 private clients, and the rest is kind of history there.
Wow. Well, I mean, I can attest to her coaching and training. It's pretty elite. We're called AITs, athletes in training. But like some of us can graduate to like, you know, beyond AITs. I haven't made it to that level yet. I got to work on my vertical jumps. I got to work on a lot of things. But how do you find balance? Because I feel like you're, I mean, in so many different pockets. You're in UT, you've got your private clients, you've got your Kollective classes. Like, how do you find balance in all of that?
Maybe I don't.
But how do you make it look so easy? I mean, you make it look seamless.
I would say it's because I really love what I do, and I try to be present in the space that I'm in. And so for me, Kollective does have very high-end clients. UT is very high-level athletes. So whoever I'm with needs to be the most important person in my day at that moment. Is my athletes need to feel completely prioritized and coached to the highest level. And then also my clients and my class attendees need to feel that way. So I think just attention to the moment and living by my calendar.
Yeah. Well, love a calendar.
So we've gotten some feedback from some of your students, we'll call them maybe AITs, that you're extremely detailed in your class. So what are a few of your effective strategies for building strength?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to start with, it's not that different to train the general population as it is to train athletes. And I'm going to say that because people are people. And the same things that motivate and drive athletes can be the same things that motivate and drive non-athletes or former athletes, right? Mm-hmm. So in building those spaces, I think you would actually see fairly similar camaraderie in both spaces. I love my class because they're like a little team now, is they see each other every Tuesday, Thursday, and they've built community in that space. And that's actually one of the things. So intrinsic motivation is far better than extrinsic motivation, right? It's going to have a lot more longevity to it. And one of the drivers of intrinsic motivation is going to be relatedness. And relatedness means that you're making connections with those people around you. One of the other things is going to be competency. So one of the aspects that I like to incorporate within class is competency is being challenged and then seeing progress over time, right? It's not me giving you so much that you feel buried, and it's not me giving you not enough so that you're not feeling challenged. So when I think about training the class and I think about ultimately they're trying to, you asked, what would be ways of training people for strength? How would you get people there? The first thing has to be buy-in, right? Is you want people to want to be in that space. You don't want people to be afraid. You don't want people to feel buried, but you want people to feel challenged. And then there's also something that is a fairly simple concept, but it's the principle of specificity. And it means whatever you're training, you're going to get better at, or whatever you want to get better at, you just train that area. So when it comes to them, how do you build strength? Consistency, and then little by little progressing a stimulus, or having the right amount of consistency in a stimulus so that you're seeing progress, but not so much that you're plateauing. So changing it every so often. So in class, I program it just like I do for my athletes. We do 4-week cycles, which is a unique environment for a general fitness class. So I'll do 4 weeks. I also teach Tuesday and Thursday, so I can program a Tuesday and Thursday, kind of like a 2-day-a-week progression. Mm-hmm. So I think those are probably the elements that make people actually continue to come back. Yeah. And also the things that are building strength for them is if I chose one exercise and I had you do it twice a week for the next 4 weeks, as long as you're pushing yourself at least a little bit, you're probably going to get stronger at that exercise.
Yeah.
You spoke about intrinsic motivation, right? And connecting with people. What are some ways that people can better develop maybe those skills when coming into a class? Is it going out of your way and like giving someone like a high five when they've done a good job? Like, what are some ways that you can connect with other people in your classes, or how do you encourage that?
I kind of label it as giving people permission. So people want to connect with other people for the most part. You're probably not coming to an exercise class if you like working out alone, but adults are shy too. Yeah. And so, introducing yourself to someone or connecting with that person can still be hard as an adult. And so the way I try to do it is to remove barriers or to force connection. Mm-hmm. So I make them have like rack buddies. I have them compete in teams in which they have to switch up the teams that they're doing. I'll tell them to give each other high fives. And so just creating ways where the likelihood of Kelly giving you a high five on her own is lower than if I am your instructor and I ask her to give you a high five, right? Mm-hmm. And then you train habits and you lower barriers. Mm-hmm. And so I try to create spaces where people can make connections really easily with each other.
I can attest to all of that. It's great. It's been really special. I don't know. I don't want to get too emo, but like it's just been really cool to see like over the last year how like tight our group really has become. Like it is so unique. Not that I'm a former like college athlete or anything, former high school athlete. But I've been like working out for the last 35 plus years, and it's just like I've never experienced anything, one, like Kollective, and two, like Anna's classes. Like she, like, and just the community that was just, I mean, obviously we had to put work in, but like, it's just been really cool. And, I'm seeing progress in relationships, like friendships, and then like also in like my strength. We're getting stronger. So yeah. And I'll give you a high five.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Feeling really connected.
You're welcome. You're my friend. Okay. So kind of as you alluded to this just a minute ago, but if someone like an average Joe is getting ready to like come to the gym for the first time and just like hit the ground running, what are some things you would try to advise them if you were their trainer to avoid doing? Because I feel like people, when they start a new diet or a new workout, they're just like all in and then they quit because they can't do something or they've reached burnout or motivation or whatever.
The first thing I ask a client is, what is your ideal? And then the second thing I ask a client is, what is actually doable? And so if you say, I want to get the best summer body anyone has ever seen, and I say, okay, how many hours a week do you work? Okay, do you ever go do anything social? Do you ever go drink? Do you ever, sleep at like what, any of those things?
Yep.
And you're going to say, ooh, maybe I can't work out an hour and a half a day, 7 days a week. Maybe that's not going to work. And so we tend to go really hard at the beginning and then fizzle off. And so I say, okay, let's start with look at your calendar. Let's start with what's actually doable.
Yep.
So do you have 2 30-minute blocks? Do you have 5-hour blocks? Maybe you work from home or you work remotely, and that's very realistic. And then I would say on top of that, now what can you be consistent with within your workout? Is if you absolutely hate strength training, maybe you only do strength training twice a week, but you love cardio. So you do cardio, you get to do cardio 3 times a week. So I'll work with them on their personality, and you need to put in some measures of discipline. Yep. Like it can't be exactly what you want to do all the time, because that's probably not working out at all. But I will say, okay, can we build something that feels very achievable for you? And sometimes people catch the bug and then you can kind of up it from there. Or other times people say, okay, I think this is good. I think 2 times a week for 45 minutes is what I can do right now.
Yeah. It's tough.
So I think a big part of this is also mentality too, right? You need to have the right mentality when walking into an environment and kind of do the things internally to like get your mind right. Because it is a long-term play. It's not something that we're doing short-term, but mental health has been kind of a hot topic for some time. How does exercise impact somebody's mental health?
I mean, study after study shows that exercise decreases. I mean, exercise and sleep are the 2 things that improve almost everything. And it gives you hormone boosts. So you are benefiting, you're reaping physical benefits from hormone releases. And they've shown that even going for a 10-minute walk can improve your mood. So it doesn't have to be this huge, grueling exercise program. Just getting up and moving and being physically active can reap huge mental health benefits. They show that people who exercise consistently have fewer like bad mental health days a month, so 40% fewer. And it also builds, I think, things that aren't maybe as tangible, like self-confidence, how you relate to others. So it improves mood and improves you physically, which I think also adds to the mental component.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's just so good. I saw something the other day and it was just like, if you're kind of feeling like basically down in the dumps, battling anxiety, just the whole notion of like going for a walk. And I've started to really like grow to love walking more. I used to be one of those like go like hard in the gym, like a hard like circuit class or like HIIT class. But it's like walking can be really, it's like underrated. Like just go on a 30-minute walk around the block.
I'm probably going to misquote this a little bit. So I don't know if Peter Attia listens to your podcast, but
Peter, shout out.
So I was listening to a podcast of his while I was running, and he was talking about the benefits of exercise. And let's say you broke the population into 20% fractions, right? The biggest benefit comes from moving from the bottom 20% to the next 20%. And so when we look at trying to improve our lives and our moods and our health, then we think we have to make this giant overhaul of our life. But in reality, going from being sedentary to going for a 10-minute walk is going from that bottom 20% to that next 20%. So what I would encourage people to do is to do what's doable, right? Is you don't have to become that giant, meathead or marathon runner to reap the benefits of exercise, right? You just have to do a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's where a lot of like friends of mine who maybe aren't like super hardcore, like fitness people or, work out all the time. And they kind of always get hung up. Like they'll start and they're like, I have to clear out all the sugar, no more this, no more that. And I'm like, no, maybe if you have 10 sodas a week, maybe let's do like 1 soda every other day. Or if you have sugar every day, maybe just treat yourself a couple times a week. Like you don't have to like completely like get rid of it. It's just like baby steps.
That's a large amount of soda that you just described there.
I don't know.
Is anyone actually doing that?
I don't know. I don't know. I have people that I know that used to be very addicted to Diet Coke. Not me personally, but I used to love soda, but that's a conversation for another day. We're getting off on a tangent. Okay. I'm interested to hear about how, because you do work with professional clients and then you work with your UT athletes, but the role that recovery and exercise and how to best get those results, I guess through an injury and then getting them back on their feet. So
when you're looking at recovery in regards to exercise, is the way that the body works is you have a stressor. So that might be running, that might be lifting, whatever it is. I talked about that principle of specificity. So you're training something. And then that thing gets slightly broken down. You rest, your body restores what that is. So let's say it's strength training, is you're going to have small microfiber tears. Your body rebuilds that. It rebuilds it stronger. It creates an adaptation there. And then now you're able to move forward a little bit more, right? So when you're looking at recovery, you have to have those recovery days so that your body doesn't continue to just break down and break down and break down. So there are a lot of people who overdo exercise. And so let's say like high intensity interval training workouts, the sprint training or the 1 minute intervals or really high intensity plyometrics and things like that, is they feel really good about themselves because they kill themselves every day, right? I feel great. I have this huge sweat. My heart rate went sky high. But if you do that every day, your body actually starts to hit a plateau and you might actually start to see yourself go backwards because you're not actually giving your body that time to have adaptations. So there's something that is called a deload week or even like body part splits. Those are pretty familiar terms for people. And the point there is, okay, if I'm bench pressing on day 1, I don't also bench press on day 2, day 3, and day 4, right? Maybe I bench press on day 1 and then I bench press again on day 4. And so you do need to repetitively stress that stimulus, but you also need to have recovery in between. The best methods for recovery are going to be waiting a period of time before you repeat that stimulus, right? And then also it's going to be sleep, hydration, nutrition. So we like foam rolling, we like cold tubbing, we like, infrared sauna, but doing all of those things, if you're not sleeping, eating, and hydrating, is like throwing $100 bills out the window and then looking on the ground for pennies, right? And so you want to say, am I doing all the big things before I start to, it's like the analogy with the jar and you put the stones in and then you put the sand in. But if you put the sand in first, then the stones don't, so put the big stones in and then all of the other things, fill the sand around it.
Yeah.
What would be your favorite though, out of those that you just kind of described? Like
sleeping.
Sleep?
Out of the other stuff. I really like infrared sauna. So the infrared rays open up your capillaries and create a higher amount of blood flow. And they'll do that at a much lower temperature than dry sauna does. So that's why the reason why an infrared sauna is able to be at a lower temperature is because the infrared rays are going to enhance that blood flow capability. So I like infrared sauna.
Wow. Well, good to know. I did this on the other day. I was trying to do the Huberman thing. Like, what did I do? 19
contrast.
minutes in the hot and then 3.5 minutes. And I haven't done the cold plunge in a minute.
But people like the dry sauna because you feel like you suffered more at the end.
Yeah, you are. You drip, drip. Like you are coming out of there sweaty.
Good. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Let's talk about injuries. So, what's your role when a player at UT gets injured, right? They might suffer, who knows what it is. Hopefully not a sprained ankle or an ACL, obviously, but that's the reality of the game that you're probably playing. But what's kind of your role in that?
So for every team, we have a sports medicine professional, and I work closely with that sports medicine person. Mm-hmm. The way that it'll work is the injury happens. They go see the sports medicine. They'll meet with the doctors, and then they'll come back with a diagnosis. We'll look at that diagnosis. If it's something traumatic, let's say it was an ACL tear, then there would be a period of time where they would be post-op. They would be just resting and recovering, right, from whatever that traumatic injury was. In that period of time, if they can still work out and just avoid that injured limb, then I always say they have 3 healthy limbs. So they'll work the other 3 limbs, and the body is amazing. There's something that is a crossover training effect. So let's say my right arm is injured. If I work my left arm, my right arm retains more of its strength than if I didn't lift my left arm at all. We can also do something that is called blood flow restriction training. And so you essentially occlude 80% of the blood flow from one of your limbs, whatever you put the cuff around, and it'll create a systemic like hormonal response that will also help that other injured limb retain some of its strength. So, and you can also use blood flow restriction training as you're coming back from injury. So let's use the right arm example. Let's say my right arm can't lift more than 10 pounds, right? So I can occlude the blood. I can take that 10-pound weight, which is, maybe 20% of the actual weight that I could do with that arm. I can do a series of, it's basically 30 repetitions, you rest, 15 repetitions, you rest, and your body has a similar response to if I were lifting that same limb at a much higher intensity. So you can also do that with coming back from injury. But going back to your original question, so at that point, after you're able to do something with that limb, then it becomes a almost like a fluid transition from injured to healthy. It's not you're in the training room all the time. It's okay, what can we start taking recovery wise or PT wise, start incorporating within the weight room, and eventually we're flowing you back into full go, right? Mm-hmm. So let's take the ACL. At first, they're just working on movement, rehabilitation up in the training room. Eventually, they might be able to do like posterior chain exercises. Then they might be able to do some of their knee exercises down in the weight room. And then maybe we're progressing on to plyometrics. And so they're spending more time with me, less time in the athletic training room, which is why that relationship is really, really important. Is you want to be on the same page with your athletic trainer and your doctors, and you need to be communicating on what everybody is doing. So what has so-and-so done up in the training room? What can I incorporate down into the weight room? And so most athletic trainers have a pretty good understanding of strength and conditioning, and most strength and conditioning coaches have a pretty good understanding of what happens in athletic training. And we're not doing each other's jobs, but we have an understanding and are able to progress people through those steps.
Yeah.
So when we think about injuries, right, there are some injuries that I think are more common probably in soccer than probably other sports that you're training for. Is that taken into consideration when you put your plans together? Because, for example, let's say soccer, hamstring. We know that that's a really common injury in soccer. So are you putting a plan together to kind of help prevent that from happening as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll do a series of sports science testing. We'll do force plate testing, which is going to show force off the ground, jump height, landing forces. It's also going to show asymmetries from right leg to left leg. We do a battery of movement tests. We do hamstring strength testing. And then we also use a tracking device that's called Catapult. So that will tell us load measures on the field as far as what's the total distance that you're running, what's the player load, what's the changes of direction, and what's the high speed distance. So now I know you guys had Dave Tenney.
We did.
Yes.
So you probably heard he's incredibly smart.
Yes.
And very good at maybe the best at sports science in regards to soccer in the U.S. So you'll take all of that information and then you say, what are the elements required for a match? So maybe that would be different at the men's professional level than it would be at the collegiate women's soccer level, right? But I can look at those metrics and I can say during the week, how much of a sprint load do we need in order to appropriately train the body to prevent hamstring injuries, but not too much to where they're now going into a high enough load that we're now putting them at risk for injury. We'll look at strength deficit. So I can say if the right leg is asymmetrical from the left beyond what we see as appropriate for not increasing chance of injury. So there's like a range in which you can be. And if you're outside of that range, then I'll say, okay, I need to train a little bit of right leg strength versus left. So maybe we would have a single leg exercise in versus a double leg exercise in. So we'll make small tweaks based upon what sports science data we come up with. And then we'll also look at data as a whole and say, what are the things that we know to be true to prevent these injuries, not just through what we're seeing on an individual basis.
Wow. That is so, there's like so much that goes into it. I mean, like, wow. Yeah. When Dave was on, I was just like, oh my gosh, you are brilliant. And I mean, like hearing you talk, I mean, like, wow. Nurses, trainers, everyone needs a round of applause.
So, I mean, you just do this for a couple different sports, right? How different is it between let's say the women's soccer team and I believe you have the women's tennis team as well, correct?
I do.
What is the difference there? I mean, is there a big difference, or kind of walk us through like maybe what that looks like?
Yeah. When you're planning a program for a team, you'll look at what are the needs of the sport. So you'll do a needs analysis. You'll say, what does the sport entail? So for instance, women's soccer versus tennis, the obvious one would be you use your upper body. You don't really use so much of your upper body, right? Yep. So in my needs analysis for soccer, I can say upper body strength goes down the scale, right? And maybe we don't need to work on as many small targeted movements in the upper body of a soccer player. Maybe we can hit the major movement patterns, and goalkeepers would be a different story. But with tennis, maybe that's something that is one of our key performance indicators, right? Or one of our key needs. And so we'll look at what are the demands of the sport. So needs analysis is what is actually being used in the sport. Mm-hmm. And then what are the energy demands of the sport? So I also work with diving. Diving is a sport that is small, explosive movements, right? So they do a one instance of an explosive movement, and then they rest sometimes upwards of 20 minutes in larger national championship competitions, right? And then they have to do it again. Soccer is consecutively running for 90 minutes. So we need to say, what are energy demands? How can I train that? And then what are, I mentioned it before, key performance indicators. You'll look at a sport and you'll say, what are the elements that actually make someone a really great soccer player? So I'll quiz you guys. What makes someone a really great soccer player?
Amazing endurance.
Endurance.
Yeah.
Right?
I was going to say endurance, yeah.
What do you think is different about the game now than it was 30 years ago?
I feel like the level of like access to things and like technology.
Yeah, technology. Data. We have a lot more data. And I would argue that speed kills now. Yeah. Is soccer used to be a little bit more of a game that you could kind of get away with having a really big engine, but now you have to be fast. You have to be athletic. Mm-hmm. So we'll look at soccer and we'll say, okay, we need to be fast, but we also need to have endurance. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at tennis, their bouts of endurance are much smaller, right? So maybe there's not as large of a priority on the aerobic system for them. Except that, here's a little interesting thing for you. So the aerobic system aids in recovery. So even if you have a sport that's highly explosive, you still don't want to just say you don't have to have even remotely, any aerobic training at all. I would argue that as a human, you need aerobic training. And as an athlete, you need somewhat of an aerobic base. But so we'll go through that series, and then that's how we come out with the program. So needs analysis, energy systems analysis, what's required of the sport. And then from there you say, well, what trains those elements? So how do you get faster?
Yeah.
Right. And then you break that down into its elements.
When you start to break down this data, are there scouts at University of Texas that are asking you for, hey, what does this data look like? And what should I be looking for in a player that's maybe started to evolve, like from your side? Are they asking you for that information or not really?
No, so really the only like interaction I would have with someone that's asking sort of those questions would be people that we're recruiting. Mm-hmm. So they'll come in on their recruiting visits, and a lot of them are starting to ask a little bit more about sports science because it is growing a lot in our field. And then the other communication we would have is if we have players that play for national teams or U23 teams, is we try and make those transitions really fluid. Mm-hmm. And so we'll send data back and forth to make sure that they have the appropriate loads going into whatever the next setting is.
Wow. So it's coming up from the youth level. They're already tracking this information, and it's
growing.
Passover. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
What are some of the things that you notice as people age in terms of like exercise physiology? Like you have a range of clients. So like, what are a couple of things you notice, like from your college kids to like your older clients?
I think sometimes we think that if we aren't using something, we're staying the same. But in reality, if you're not using something, it's going to start to diminish over time. One of the things that I do with my class that's unique is we do a lot of plyometrics and like movement-based things, and I'll progress them up safely. And if someone can't do something, I'll do a modification. But I'll try and put athletic movements because that's one of the things that we're least likely to train as we age. And fast twitch fibers are going to be the first thing to detrain as we age, or to detrain if you're not using them in general at any age. Another thing is, so if you, per decade, we on average lose 3 to 8% of our muscle mass, which is going to, if you look into the future, be a big risk factor for morbidity, is going to be losing strength and losing that aerobic capacity. So grip strength, they've done studies on grip strength, and that's going to be a high indicator of longevity. And I would argue that it's not about training your grip strength. Like if you did the little squeezy things.
Yeah. It's not going to make you live longer.
Times a day. It's like the point is like, are you doing things with your body? Like, are you holding things? Are you moving things? Do you have a certain amount of density to you? And so continuing exercise routine as you age is incredibly important. And injury starts to deter us from that. So I think doing what you can is still important. Is if you have bad knees, well, you don't have to go sprint and run. You can do other things that are safer, which is why I think it's important if you're not sure what to do, or you haven't ever been in a strength training environment, or you do have an injury that you need to work around, is you don't have to have a lifelong personal trainer. Hire somebody that knows what they're doing, do like 3 or 4 sessions with them, and then take what you've learned and continue it on into your own exercise routine. It's shocking how little that we educate people about how to work out. And gym intimidation is a real thing, and that's why people love machines, is because it's safe and they know how to do it. And so I'm a big proponent of just have someone teach you. Just go in and get a couple of sessions. Say, I don't want to be trained forever. I want to learn how to squat. I want to learn how to lunge. I want to learn how to deadlift. I want to learn how to bench press. Like, you don't even have to train me. Just teach me, right? And then you can take those elements and you can go and use them on your own.
Yeah, you got to connect. You can't connect on a machine, right? And I think what's cool about the environments at Kollective, even I haven't gone yet, but I think what people need to understand when you do go into those environments is that even if it's your first day and you're struggling, everybody has that first day that they struggle, but everybody is motivating.
Yeah.
And they'll encourage you to be better even on day one. So I feel like that's probably the biggest thing, is people don't want to go because they might feel uncomfortable or they're not in the same rhythm as everybody else in the class, but that's not really what it's about, right?
Yeah. It's all about just kind of like starting. Like feel like my health journey, I was like, I had the gym intimidation too. And it was like in college, and it was like, okay, my metabolism's not the same as it was in high school. Things are going to have to change quickly. And I just like went to our little like college gym and then like slowly built myself up. And I was like, gym classes can be intimidating because like to your point, it's like, oh my gosh, they have big muscles and they know how to do all these movements and they know the flow of the workout. And like, honestly, it sounds cliche and simple, but just like just like put yourself a little outside of your comfort zone. And I feel like that just opens the door to like so much, because then you do build your self-confidence. You're like, oh, okay, I can do that rep, or okay, it's fine if I start at a lower weight, like, and work and build myself up. But yeah, Collective's definitely just has an amazing atmosphere and just very welcoming. I mean, like when I came almost 2 years ago, it was just like, my trainer Atlanta was like, you have to connect with Jeremy and Collective and what they're doing. It's like unlike any other. And I was like, Brian, you're the real one for telling me about this place.
Cool. Well, I think what we're really interested in asking you is that, look, over the last decade of UT, what's been the biggest change that you've seen in the athletic department?
Biggest change would be, I'm going to put recruiting and NIL up there.
Interesting.
Is not, I mean, recruiting and NIL, but also just recruiting is, I was talking to Eddie Reese, he's the winningest coach in NCAA history. He has the most national championships out of anyone in NCAA history. He's our men's swim coach.
Wow.
And he was telling a story. He's a legend. He was telling a story about how he would coach all day, and then he would go, at the end of the day, he would go check his voicemails on his phone, right? And then call recruits back. And now it is absolutely 100% nonstop. And they've even opened up recruiting windows. They've created, being able to recruit at earlier ages. And so now, I mean, thankfully, I don't do all of that recruiting. But if you asked a head coach, I would say the answer that they would give is recruiting is pretty nonstop.
It's more competitive.
Definitely.
Wow. And it's just because people want to call the coach directly and be like, I want to be on your team.
Yeah, I mean, there's more people going on visits. There's looser recruiting boundaries as far as when you can talk to people, what early of an age you can talk to people, cell phones, social media. It's just opened up a world of recruiting. And if you see now, I mean, media does like photo shoots with people in their jerseys, and there's just so much that goes into recruiting now. There's social media productions in which people announce where they're going to school, and all of that has just increased. It's been a dramatic change since I first started, which would have been about 2007. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also think the environment of coaching and college athletics has changed a little bit. The athlete has more power now. Is back in the day, your coach said to do X, you absolutely did X, right? Now, that's not necessarily the way that things are. And I think there's two sides to that. I think it's for better or for worse, right? Is there genuinely are coaches that are mistreating their athletes and need to be held accountable for those things. Yeah. But then on the other side, it's really easy to jump ship now. And it's really easy to, I think, blame the coach for maybe your shortcomings, when in reality, maybe the athlete just needs a little bit more resiliency, So I think there's two sides to that.
What would you say if someone were to ask you, aka me, what do you enjoy most about your job as a whole? Your job with Collective, your job with UT, and your personal clients?
I think I have the best job in the world. And I think my position is a little bit like a vice president. Is, the strength and conditioning coach doesn't get all the glamour, the glory, or, someone's trainer doesn't get all the glamour and the glory in their life, but they're that person in the background supporting and helping that person meet their goals. I love being able to see people want something and then being willing to push and achieve that thing that they desire. And we talked about exercise improves mental health. And so I get to make people happier all day.
And dopamine hits.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of like credibility, right? I mean, you've actually coached women's UT players that have gone and played in the Women's World Cup, right? And they spent that time with you before going back and playing with their national team and then getting recognized on television. So
I'm going to tell a little story about that. So this is one of my favorite coaching moments. So there's a woman named Julia Grosso. She's on the Canadian national team, and the Canadian national team won the most recent gold in the Olympics. So Julia, in the spring, the Olympic roster was starting to be set. There's going to be different camps that will choose the roster. So she came to me and the head coach at the beginning of the spring, and she said, I want to make the roster. And I said, okay, then you got to put in the work. So Julia really buckled down and put in a lot of work. She ends up getting selected for the women's national team. And then fast forward, and she made the gold-winning PK to finish the match. And I told her that I felt overwhelmed with happiness when it happened, because I got to see how the sausage was made, right?
Yeah.
I got to see her want something. I got to see her work for something, and then I got to see her achieve something. And I think that that's what probably every coach who really loves coaching, I think that that's the answer that they would give.
Absolutely. You shared that moment with her, right?
Yeah.
Like you felt it probably just as much as she did because you helped her get in that position. So, wow, that's an incredible story.
That's amazing.
I was feeling it. I was like, dang, I just scored the PK.
I'm like, I want that feeling. That's so cool.
When she made that goal.
Deep. Wow.
Words probably can't even explain.
I've never been so happy for someone.
You were a little Canadian at that moment.
Our head coach is Canadian.
Okay.
So I think we're all a little Canadian.
Everyone was oh, Canada. Okay. I'm not going to sing anymore. Wow. Well, that's special. Well, I did give you a little hint, a little heads up that we close out each episode with a little rapid fire.
Okay.
Very lighthearted, super fun questions. So just like the first thought or word that comes to mind when we ask you these.
Okay.
Favorite restaurant in Austin?
ATX Casino.
And what do you get at ATX Casino? What do you recommend to the people?
Okay, they're like these little. Have you been there?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how to pronounce the word.
Okay.
It's like machete or something.
Let's go. I'm trying to track what. Oh, do they?
And it's like a little quesadilla.
Oh, wait, I haven't had these. Okay.
It's my favorite thing. It's like an appetizer there.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
It's usually good if you can't pronounce it.
I know.
Like, I have no clue how to say it. It's delicious. Trust me.
It's like when you read a book and for 400 pages, you never actually know how to pronounce the person's name. You just like roll over it every time.
I just want to give them a new name. I give them a new name in books like that. Bob. 3 things you're taking with you on a desert island.
I'm taking my Bible because I'm a Christian.
Yep.
Do I have clothes on my back? Like is running shoes something?
Yeah. Maybe just like other essentials. You have clothing and shoes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm taking. Oh, this is kind of a hard question for me, I guess. I need some level of entertainment, probably a ball. I'm taking some kind of a ball, maybe a soccer ball, we'll say. Okay. And then I can only take objects. I can't take a person.
I'm going to take a person.
Okay. I'm gonna drag my boyfriend along onto my desert island.
Brian's coming with you. Brian made the cut. Most recent Netflix or Hulu binge?
So I just finished watching, I guess it's coming out episode by episode, but I'm in the middle of Ted Lasso season 3.
Epic.
And this is a soccer podcast, so that's the one I have to say.
Yeah, it's fun. You don't have to say that. It's a great show. It's so well done. But the last 3 guests we've had on,
they've all said that?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Or they've named some other ones, but they're like, but the one that reigns supreme, Ted Lasso.
Okay, I'm also in the middle of Succession right now.
So good. But we can't give any spoilers because some of our listeners haven't started it yet.
And then I love anything with like I need a good thick plot.
Oh yeah, same.
So I'll say Succession then.
It's so good. One thing or one food item you can't live without?
I do like sweets. So a misnomer that people have is if you're in the fitness industry, you eat really, really healthy all the time, but you just have to be back at equilibrium and then you're good to go. So for me, I probably eat one sweet thing a day.
Okay. Have you had your sweet thing
Such
today?
as-
I haven't because I'm going to see a movie after this. So I'm waiting to eat my sweet thing.
Fun. That brings shout out.
What do you get at the movies? What's your go-to
Or
movie theater
Anna, do you
order?
bring your own snacks?
Okay, so I'm just going to say it on a podcast.
Okay.
I grew up in a very frugal family.
Okay.
So I usually bring my own.
Shout out. I bring my own snacks too.
We'll have
And
to
I'm
have
gonna
a poll on who
I'm gonna
brings
bring
their own
peanut butter
snacks.
M&Ms.
So good. Oh my
Clutch.
gosh. I do that too. I
Very
like,
clutch.
in my 30s and I'm like, I still bring my own snacks. I don't know.
It's just in your upbringing, you can't get away from what was ingrained in you.
No.
I'm past the point of change. There.
Oh. Honestly, sometimes it's like more fun, but I was a rule follower, so I was like, I can't bring my own
Are
snacks.
you saying that she's not a rule follower by bringing
Not
her own
even
food?
remotely.
No.
Not
even
like,
close.
not like Kelly.
But like, yeah,
So we actually had this whole discussion in class the other day about how there's different types of rule followers. So there's 4 different types of rule followers. There's the one that no matter what follows the rule just because it's a rule, and that's Kelly.
that's me.
And then there's another
Hit
one
me.
that assesses the rule and decides within themselves if it's a good rule and what the consequences are of the rule, and that would be me.
and then breaks the rule. The loose rule. Okay, finish this sentence. When I grow up, I want to be.
Is that from when I was little or now?
Anna, you can take it for finish it how you want.
Okay,
Younger
when I
Anna or-
grew up, okay, I'm going to give you 2 answers.
Okay.
When I was little, I was convinced I wanted to be a fighter pilot like my dad.
Ooh.
So that was what I wanted to be when I grew up. Then I decided that the military academies were not for me.
Yeah.
And then now, what do I want to be when I grow up? Okay, I'm going to get a little deeper with this question.
Ooh, okay.
Something that I've realized as I get older and I experience more things is when I get older, I want to have more kindness and more wisdom. Is I think if you do it right as you age, then those are the 2 qualities that enhance more than anything.
Yep.
So I hope that I continue to grow in this.
That was deep. I
You're
like that.
hired. She's hired. She's hired. Nico, you want to take away?
All right. What's your favorite sport to watch?
Women's volleyball. I love watching volleyball.
Beach volleyball or just like any women's volleyball?
I really enjoy going to like court volleyball
Okay.
or beach volleyball. There's not as much access for that for me. I got to say college football,
Yeah.
Of course I'll watch college football, but
Look,
my dark horse second place would be women's volleyball. And I love watching soccer. I also feel like that's a given.
Yeah.
All right. So, favorite athlete then?
I mentioned Brian, my boyfriend.
Yeah.
So we actually, the other day, we had this discussion and he scoffed at my answer. So
Ooh.
I'm going to give my favorite athlete.
We won't scoff.
I love Shaun White, the snowboarder.
Okay.
I'm from Colorado and I grew up snowboarding. And he and I believe, are the same age. And so I felt like I grew up with Shaun White. And again, like when he won his most recent gold medal as, a
Yes.
geriatric.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I was like,
You're like, I won that medal.
I'm like, we're not too old. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've just followed his career,
Yep.
have loved his successes as an athlete. And I think he seems like a pretty neat person too.
Yeah. You want to shred with him?
Oh, there's nothing I love more than snowboarding.
Yeah. That's great. We usually get soccer answers, so I like that. That was kind of a dark horse in this Q&A.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's your favorite quote or mantra you live by? Bonus points if you have a tattoo of it.
Almost all of our
Everybody
guests
has had
have
a
their
tattoo.
favorite quote.
What's my favorite mantra or quote? Again, I said I'm a Christian, so I don't know. The one that just popped into my mind is the verse that says, I will be with you always until the end of time. And so for me, everything that I do generates from my strength that comes from my faith. And just the concept of like God constantly being with me. I think celebrating my wins with me and blessings, and then also being with me through hard times. And so the consistency of that is probably the most impactful. And I don't have any tattoos.
No, it's like literally crazy. When we first started asking it, they're like, funny you ask. It's my tattoo. It's my favorite quote. I'm like, oh, wow.
It's usually an arm sleeve or nothing at all.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm too risk averse.
Yeah.
Same. I can't even get my finger pricked. So,
what do you think Austin's next professional sports team should be?
I don't think we need any. I think we need to. I think we need stick with
people
Austin
need to stop
FC.
moving here.
I think Austin FC was a phenomenal addition to Austin, but I think that any other professional sport would struggle because of UT athletics. I think that Austin is an interesting environment for professional sports. So
we've heard women's professional soccer should be the next one. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'd love that. I hope that it would be as successful. And I mean, the game of soccer for women is just growing and growing. And I think that the attention that the national team is getting and the equality that they're starting to gain, I think will just continue to grow the sport in the U.S., especially as it becomes more lucrative for women to actually play at the next level. Is right now it's really hard to be a professional female athlete in, I would argue, many sports. And so it's awesome to see that growing, and that will continue to grow the game at youth levels.
Yeah.
You want to take the last one?
Okay, this is my favorite one. A lot of food questions. I love it, though. If you could have dinner with 3 people, dead and or alive, who would they be?
I don't know if you guys have noticed too, but I feel like I'm a thoughtful, like I need processing time.
Yeah. This is great. You can process all you want. I mean.
Okay, if I could have dinner with 3 people, I'm going to choose Winston Churchill.
Okay, we got a little history buff.
I'm going to choose probably a theologian, or, like a R.C. Sproul, or, someone more modern day, like a Tim Keller or something like that.
Okay,
I would probably, I want to have dinner with people I can learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last one would be,
Could you learn from somebody like in sports? Like, what about Shaun White?
Shaun White can come to dinner.
Okay. That would be such a click. I've loved, honestly, like looking back.
I need some of the personality. Maybe Michael Jordan would come to dinner.
Oh, yes. Is that what you guys are going to go see? Air?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 12 out of 10. It's so good. Have you seen it?
I think that someone, or, MJ or Kobe are coming.
Kobe.
Yeah.
Wait, who would your 3 be?
Mine?
Yeah.
Now I'm getting put on the spot on the
Okay.
What are y'all's 3?
Oprah.
Oh, okay.
I've loved her since like just day one. I used to race home and watch her every day after school. And then I feel like Kobe's a good one. We're putting Kobe in the mix. And then this is kind of hard. I don't know. Let me think about it.
Mine would be Messi, Wayne Gretzky, and MJ.
Your night's just going to break out in some sort of competition.
Yeah.
Probably gambling with MJ.
Probably gambling. Who would my 3rd be? Dang, this is like real. I mean, I feel like I want like somebody I can learn from too.
Or maybe I invite someone that knows the answer to some conspiracy, like
yes,
who was there the day JFK died or something,
OJ. Ooh, maybe I Kris Jenner. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That would be a riot. Well, that concludes our episode. Thank you so much, Anna, for joining us and taking time out of your day to share about your story and your work that you're doing here in Austin. I know I say this a lot, but you're just so talented, and I feel like our listeners and viewers are going to get a lot out of this episode. So thank you again, and to our viewers and listeners, follow us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And Anna, if you want to let our listeners know where they can follow you or see what you're doing and what's going on in your life.
The best would probably be Instagram. It's Anna E. Craig. And you can see what I'm up to there.
All the things, Kollective, UT. Well, that concludes our episode. So we will see you guys next time.
Thanks.